My name's David, and if you'd told me a week ago that I would die, meet Jesus, and come back to talk about it, I would have laughed. Not in a mean way, just that tired, skeptical chuckle you develop after life beats you down a little. I'm in my 40s. I work hard, pay my bills, and mind my own business. I've never been the religious type. Faith, church, God. I respected all of it from a safe distance, but I never let it get too close. As far as I was concerned, life was simple. You do your best, you get through, and when it's over, it's over. Most of my days were filled with noise, deadlines, repairs, errands. I was always running, always busy. Sure, I had fleeting thoughts that maybe something bigger was out there, but I never stopped long enough to figure it out. I didn't pray. I didn't read the Bible. Honestly, I thought faith was for people who needed something to hold on to. I didn't think I needed it. I had a job, a roof over my head, and just enough chaos to remind me I was still alive. God, heaven, those ideas felt distant, like stories meant for someone else. Life was loud, messy, and full. I didn't have time to stop and think about eternity. But all that changed in an instant. It was just another ordinary afternoon. I don't remember the weather or what I had for breakfast. It was one of those days that blends into the routine, until it didn't. At first it was subtle, like a distant rumble, the kind you'd ignore thinking it's just a truck passing by. But within seconds, that faint vibration turned into something terrifying. The ground beneath me didn't just shake, it shifted, like a living thing waking up angry. The noise grew louder, a low, guttural roar that swallowed everything around me. My balance was gone. The floor wasn't solid anymore. Walls cracked, glass shattered, and the world erupted in chaos. People screamed, but their voices were swallowed by the sound of the earth tearing itself apart. I didn't think. I just ran. Instinct took over. I dodged debris, ducked falling signs, and swerved away from snapping wires. The street was a war zone. Dust rising, people crying, some frozen in shock, others desperately searching for safety. I remembered what they say: get to an open area, stay away from buildings. I bolted down an alley, hoping for space, but that's when it happened. A deep, almost ancient crack echoed behind me. I turned, but it was too late. Something, maybe a wall, maybe a piece of a roof, collapsed. And then, silence. No pain, no noise, just nothing. I wasn't unconscious. I was aware, thinking, feeling, but not with a body. I can't fully explain it. It was like I had stepped out of myself, floating in a space where time and sound didn't exist. For a moment, I wondered if this was what dying felt like. But I had no idea what was coming next. One moment, I was surrounded by chaos, screams, crumbling stone, and dust choking the air. The next, I was somewhere else. But I wasn't soaring into the clouds or drifting toward some glowing tunnel. I was above it all, floating, weightless, watching the wreckage unfold beneath me. I could see everything: the broken buildings, the people scrambling to help, and my own body, crushed, lifeless, still. It was surreal, seeing myself like that, yet feeling so calm. I wasn't part of the disaster anymore. The noise, the panic, the pain, all of it was gone. I was fully aware, yet strangely detached. There was no fear, no confusion, just a quiet knowing, like I had stepped beyond time. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I was dreaming. But the truth was undeniable. My chest wasn't moving. My body was twisted, broken. The people around me were searching, shouting, pulling at the wreckage, but no one was looking for me. because I was already gone. What struck me most wasn't the fact that I was dead. It was the peace, a stillness that didn't belong to this world. It was like stepping out of a raging storm and into a place where everything was clear. And then I felt it. Something pulling me. Not a physical tug, but a deep, irresistible draw, like an invisible current calling me forward. It wasn't forceful. It was gentle, inviting, and I followed. What came next? I still struggle to describe. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't a vision. It was real, more real than anything I had ever known. I had crossed into a realm where words fall short, where reality was deeper, sharper, and more alive than anything I had ever experienced. And in that moment, I knew. I was just at the beginning of something far greater than I could have ever imagined. I had always imagined that death would be like closing a door. One moment you're here, and the next, nothing. But I was wrong. When I left my body behind, I didn't fall into darkness. I didn't vanish. I was aware, more aware than I had ever been. Everything was still, but not empty. The silence wasn't void. It was alive. It was like standing in the calm before a great storm, except there was no fear, only presence. I don't know how long I floated in that space between life and something else, but I could feel something, someone, waiting. It wasn't a distant feeling. It was near, closer than my own thoughts, a presence so holy, so pure, that it didn't need words to make itself known. I wasn't scared, but I was overwhelmed. I had never believed in heaven or angels. I lived my life as if death was the final page. But now I knew. It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. And then I felt it. It wasn't footsteps. It wasn't sound. It was presence, moving toward me like light traveling through light. I hadn't seen anything yet, but I knew. Whatever was approaching, it knew me. It wasn't there to judge or condemn. It was revealing me, peeling back every layer of who I was. And though I couldn't see him yet, I knew. My soul knew before my mind caught up. It was him, Jesus. Not the version I'd seen in paintings or heard about in passing conversations. Not a symbol, not a myth. This was the real Jesus. And he wasn't coming with wrath or anger. His presence was powerful, yes, but it was filled with something I couldn't fully grasp. Love. A love so vast, so intense, that it made me painfully aware of how small I was. Yet at the same time, I had never felt more seen. I thought dying in that earthquake would be the end of my story. I had no idea it was just the prologue. I had left behind the chaos, the cracking concrete, the screams, the debris, and now I was suspended in a space where time no longer mattered. I could see everything that happened after I died. People digging through rubble, strangers helping strangers. Some prayed, others cried, and a few just stood frozen, unable to comprehend the destruction around them. I saw acts of compassion I would have missed if I'd still been alive. People stripped down to their most honest, raw selves. No pretense, no filters. Just raw humanity in the face of disaster. And yet, I wasn't part of it anymore. I wasn't tied to it. I wasn't rejected or forgotten. I had just moved beyond it. That's when I felt it again. The pull. It wasn't like being dragged or pushed. It was more like gravity, but not pulling me down or up. Inward. A force, gentle yet irresistible, drawing me deeper into something beyond anything I'd ever known. I didn't resist. I couldn't. It felt natural, like a current that knew exactly where to take me. The world I had known began to fade. The sights, the sounds, the chaos. It all dimmed, like turning down the volume of life itself. And then, I was somewhere else. Not heaven, not yet. But a place in between. a realm of stillness and awareness. I didn't see landscapes or light, but I felt everything. The space around me wasn't empty. It was alive. It didn't pulse or move, yet it had a presence. Like the air itself was aware of me, welcoming me. And in that space, I wasn't alone. I didn't hear voices, but I felt something greater, something intelligent, holy. I could feel my thoughts laid bare, clearer than ever before. Every moment of my life, every intention, every memory, it was all there, exposed, but not judged. It wasn't an interrogation. It was truth, undeniable and honest. And for the first time in my existence, I had no desire to hide. There was no need for excuses, no space for lies. And then I felt him. At first it was warmth in the distance, but it grew, quickly, powerfully, until it was everything. A presence so vast and yet so personal. Holy. Beautiful. And as he drew closer, I realized something. The stillness wasn't emptiness, it was anticipation. The pause before something eternal stepped into view. And though I hadn't seen him yet, every part of me knew who was coming. Jesus. Not as a figure hanging on a cross, not as a word on a page, but as truth itself. And in that moment, every doubt I had carried, every wall I had built, every question I had clung to, it all crumbled. His presence was more real than anything I had ever believed. His reality was bigger than my disbelief. And I knew I was standing on the edge of something that would change everything. I used to think death would be terrifying, a plunge into cold, empty darkness. But I was so wrong. Death wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something more real than life had ever been. And just when I thought I had experienced the unimaginable, something even greater was about to meet me face to face. I didn't see him approach. There were no footsteps, no gradual unveiling. One moment, I was surrounded by stillness, and the next, he was there. His presence filled the space instantly, like light flooding a room. Yet it wasn't just light. It was alive. Every part of me felt it, and though I hadn't seen him yet, I knew. I didn't need an introduction. I didn't need to hear his name. My soul recognized him before my mind could catch up. Jesus. But not the Jesus I had imagined in fleeting thoughts. Not the face from a painting or the figure people talk about in arguments or Sunday sermons. This was him, the real Jesus, the one who holds eternity in his hands, the one I never believed I would meet, the one I had spent my life ignoring. And yet, here he was. His presence wasn't loud, but it was overwhelming. I couldn't look away, not because I was forced to, but because there was nothing else in existence that could possibly matter more. His light didn't just shine, it moved. It carried weight. It wasn't like sunlight or fire. It passed through me, exposing everything I was. And with that light came a love so powerful, so pure, that it shattered every wall I had ever built to keep him out. I couldn't hide. I didn't want to. In his presence, my pride, my doubts, my carefully crafted excuses, they all crumbled. He saw everything. He had always seen everything, every moment, every motive, every time I had turned away. But here's what stunned me the most. He loved me anyway. Not in a distant, vague way. It was personal, fierce. His love wasn't soft or sentimental. It was strong, unrelenting. It reached the places I didn't even understand about myself. I fell to my knees, not because he forced me to, but because I couldn't stand in front of that kind of holiness. My spirit collapsed under the weight of it, not from fear, but from awe. I was standing before someone who had created me, pursued me, and waited for me, even when I had spent my life pretending he wasn't real. And yet, he didn't turn me away. His eyes, I'll never forget them. They held something no human emotion could contain. It wasn't just compassion. It was fire. It was depth. It was eternity. And then he spoke, not with thunder or a booming voice. His words were gentle, yet they shook me to my core. You were made for more than what you chased. Just like that, my entire life flashed before me. But it wasn't a review. It was a realization. I saw every moment I had wasted, chasing things that didn't matter. Every hour I had spent worrying about money, status, or what people thought. Every time I numbed my emptiness with distractions. Every moment I brushed off that quiet, persistent pull toward something deeper. And I felt it all at once, like a weight I had carried for so long that I didn't even realize it was there. He wasn't accusing me. He was inviting me to see, and I couldn't look away. I wanted to speak, to explain, to apologize, but words wouldn't come. All I could do was weep, not from shame, not from guilt, but from a deep, aching grief for the life I had spent so far from the one I was created for. I had lived like Jesus was optional, like truth was relative, like eternity was something I could worry about later. But there is no later when you're standing face to face with the one who is eternity. And then he stepped closer. The space between us wasn't empty. It was sacred. Even the air felt like it was worshipping him. And when he spoke again, his words undid me. I never stopped reaching for you. Those words shattered every defense I had left. I had ignored him. I had mocked him. I had dismissed him. And still, he had reached. Through every season, through every moment of silence, through every day I had lived as if he didn't exist, he had never turned away. He began to show me moments from my life, not the ones I expected, not just the obvious mistakes, the selfish choices, or the missed opportunities. He showed me the small moments, the in-between ones, times I had passed by someone who needed help, a woman crying in her car while I looked the other way, a co-worker hinting at needing support, but I was too busy finishing a report, a child in a store who tried to talk to me and I brushed him off with polite indifference. It wasn't that I was cruel, I was just numb, disconnected, and I never realized how much that mattered. Then he showed me the moments when I had felt something, a nudge, a whisper, a pull, and ignored it. Times I had felt the need to reach out, to apologize, to speak life into someone. And I didn't. I had always thought those were just passing thoughts. But now I knew that was him, every time, knocking softly, inviting me, and I had turned away. But now, I was finally listening. And I knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And whatever was coming next would change everything. I used to think that as long as I was a good person, I was doing just fine. I didn't lie, cheat, or steal. I paid my dues, worked hard, and treated people with respect. By the world's standards, I was doing okay. But standing there in his presence, I realized how shallow that thinking had been. Jesus didn't measure my life by success, reputation, or the mistakes I avoided. He measured it by love, by truth, by how much of my life aligned with his heart. And when I saw my life through his eyes, it wasn't full. It was empty, safe, controlled, spiritually blind. It wasn't the big sins that struck me. It was the missed moments. The times I could have shown kindness but stayed silent. The opportunities to offer grace that I let pass. The small nudges to forgive, to encourage, to reach out. And I ignored them. He showed me how even the tiniest choices had ripple effects I had never imagined. A kind word I withheld could have lifted someone out of despair. A quiet grudge I held changed how I treated the people I loved. A moment I chose comfort over courage led to a distance that never healed. I didn't just see what I had done. I saw what could have been. The lives I could have touched. The peace I could have carried. The joy I could have walked in. If I had lived with eternal awareness instead of running on autopilot. I had spent so much energy building a life that wouldn't last, chasing comfort, security, and approval from a world I couldn't take with me. And now, standing before the one who gave me life, I realized I had never truly lived for him. I had been surviving, existing, coasting, but I hadn't been living, not the way I was created to. And yet, even as the weight of all this settled on me, Jesus never looked away. He didn't turn his back. He didn't shake his head in disappointment. He stood there, steady, unmoving, present. And the most overwhelming part, his love didn't fade when the truth came out. It deepened. He wasn't loving some polished version of me. He was loving me, the real me. Even the parts I had hidden, the broken, selfish, fearful parts I had buried. And then he spoke words that shattered every defense I had left. I didn't want perfection. I wanted your heart. I wept, not from shame, but from the staggering realization of how much I had missed. All the striving, the pretending, the running, from him. And all along, all he had ever wanted was me. The tragedy wasn't that I had failed. It was that I had never even tried to know him. I had kept him at a distance. I had lived like he was a stranger, but now I knew. He was the one who knew me best. Every wall I had built cracked open. Every lie I had believed about what mattered, about who I was, about who he was. It all crumbled under the weight of his truth. And I was finally ready. Ready to see what he really wanted to show me. I had seen my life. Now, he was about to show me the world through his eyes, through his heart, through the lens of eternity. If someone had asked me what Christianity was before this moment, I would have given a vague, half-hearted answer. Something like, it's about being a good person, or it's a bunch of rules. I didn't hate Christians, I just didn't get them. I thought they were trying to earn God's approval by being nice, staying out of trouble, and going to church. It seemed exhausting, restrictive, boring. I figured if God was real, he'd care more about whether I was decent than whether I followed a religion. But standing there, I finally understood. Christianity isn't about rules. It's about relationship. It wasn't a system designed to control people or keep them afraid. It was an invitation from a father to his children. A daily walk with the Creator who never stopped reaching for them. Jesus didn't show me checklists. He didn't demand religious performance. He showed me his heart. And that heart was beating with a love I had never known before. Not a shallow, sentimental love. A love that was sacrificial. A love that saw me at my worst and still chose the cross. A love that didn't wait for me to get my life together, but came looking for me when I was lost. And in that moment I realized this was what I had been missing all along. I used to think the Bible was just a collection of old stories, some interesting, some confusing, but all irrelevant to my life. But now, standing in his presence, I saw it for what it really was. It wasn't a book of rules. It was a lifeline. Every word was written out of love, a desperate plea from a father calling his children home before they were lost forever. I had misunderstood it. I had mistaken the heart of God for the harshness of people. And I realized I wasn't alone in that. Jesus showed me hearts, people just like me, Some had grown up in church but walked away because it felt empty. Others had never known him. Only fragments of truth, distorted by culture, rumors, and half-told stories. I saw people searching, through crystals, meditation, philosophy, grasping for something real to fill the ache inside. And he loved every single one of them. There was no anger in him, only sorrow that they were looking everywhere except to the one who had created them. But what broke me the most was seeing how many had been misled, not by evil, but by distortion. I saw churches that had turned the gospel into a list of rules, making people feel like they had to earn what was always meant to be a gift. I saw others reduce faith to entertainment, flashy, loud and inspiring, but lacking real transformation. But I also saw the remnant, quiet, humble believers who truly knew him. They gave when no one was watching. They forgave when it hurt. They carried truth without pride. They weren't perfect, but they walked closely with the one who is. Then Jesus looked at me. There was no judgment in his eyes, only that steady, unshakable love. And he spoke words that pierced my soul. It was never about what you could do for me. It was always about what I already did for you. That hit me harder than anything else. I had misunderstood the very foundation of faith. I thought Christianity was about becoming good enough for God. I thought I had to clean up, act right, behave perfectly, and perform well enough for him to accept me. But Jesus showed me it was the opposite. You don't come to him once you've got it all figured out. You come as you are, broken, bitter, skeptical, ashamed. And he does the work in you. It's not about self-improvement. It's about surrender. It's not about earning. It's about receiving. And once you've received that kind of love, once you've truly seen it, you want to live differently. Not because you have to, but because you finally understand who he is. I remembered all the times people had tried to talk to me about God. I had smiled politely, changed the subject, or shut it down completely. I thought they were preaching, but now I saw they were trying to rescue me. I had been so close to truth so many times, and I never realized it. Through strangers, through songs, through nature, even in hard times when I muttered, "God help me," without meaning it. He heard me. I just didn't know it was him. And then Jesus showed me something else, something simple but devastating. The enemy doesn't try to convince people that God is evil. He just convinces them that God isn't real or that he doesn't matter. That's all it takes. And it worked. It worked on me. I hadn't hated God. I had just ignored him. I didn't curse him. I just didn't care. And that was enough to keep me from knowing the truth. But Jesus wasn't showing me all this to crush me. He was redeeming me right there in that moment. He wasn't interested in whether I could quote scripture, join a church, or pretend to be religious. He just wanted me. My yes, my heart, my attention, my trust. And I realized then, the door had always been open. I just never walked through it. I broke again, but this time it wasn't from sorrow. It was from surrender. I told him everything. I have nothing to offer. I wasted so much time. I ignored you. I mocked what I didn't understand. I lived like you didn't matter. And he simply said, "But you're here now." Those words changed everything. I finally understood that Christianity isn't a club. It's not a moral checklist. It's a rescue mission. It's a love story. A father chasing down his lost children with relentless grace. And when he finds them, he doesn't ask for explanations. He just wraps them in love and calls them his own. I had spent my life running from the one who loved me more than anyone else ever could. But now, I was ready to stop running. I was ready to follow. I was ready to learn what it really meant to walk with him, not in religion, but in relationship. And just when I thought this was the end of the story, Jesus said something that shook me to my core. Now, let me show you what they're not seeing. The world I had known was about to look very, very different. And this time I wasn't seeing it through my eyes. I was seeing it through his. When Jesus spoke this time, his voice was steady and quiet, but it burned with a fire I could feel in my soul. There will be a divide between those who follow me and those who only say they do. That sentence hit me like a lightning bolt. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning, a preparation for what was coming. I saw then that the world wasn't just heading toward a moment. It was being pulled toward a choice. A great division was unfolding, not one defined by race, politics, or nationality, but by truth and deception. I saw the battle, and it wasn't being fought with weapons. It was fought with words, with ideologies, with worship. At the core of everything was a single question. Who will you worship, yourself or God? Some would choose God fully, boldly, even when it cost them everything. These were the ones who would shine, not because they were perfect, but because they were pure. They would stand firm, unmoved by fear, comfort, or the need to fit in. They wouldn't be the most popular, but they would be the most powerful, because they carried his spirit. They knew his voice. And they would not bow. But others? I wept for them. They weren't evil. They were just tired, distracted, and pulled by the weight of fear and comfort. I saw people swept away, not because they hated God, but because they drifted. Slowly at first, then completely. And I saw myself in them. I saw who I could have been if Jesus hadn't pulled me out. The future wasn't a simple picture of good versus evil. It was complicated. I saw danger, but I also saw destiny. I saw deception, but I also saw deliverance. And the line between the two wasn't always obvious. But the difference, the thing that would determine it all, was Jesus. Those who clung to him would endure. They would overcome. They would shine. But those who ignored him, who clung instead to culture, to self, to lies, would drift further and further away. And just when I thought I couldn't bear to see more, the vision began to fade. The images pulled back, and I was left standing there in that still place beside Jesus, changed, marked, awakened. He looked at me, not with pity or pride, but with purpose. "It's not too late," he said, "but they need to know. And you must tell them." Those words echoed through me, and I knew my time there was ending. But I didn't want to leave. I wasn't thinking about pain, bills, or the weight of life. I wasn't even thinking about death. I was thinking about him. For the first time in my life, my real life, I was home. Being with Jesus, feeling his presence without distance or distraction, made me feel more alive than I had ever been. There was no sickness, no shame, no striving. I was fully known, fully seen, and still fully loved. And when I realized that this moment was coming to an end, something inside me broke. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My thoughts were open pages in his hands, and he read them completely. And he saw what I was asking without me saying a word. "Please don't send me back." But I already knew his answer before he spoke. "You must go back." His voice was firm, but filled with love. "There are others like you, ready, but asleep." Those words pierced through me. Ready, but asleep. I had been there. I had lived in that place for years, so close to the truth I could almost touch it, but too proud, too distracted, to embrace it. And now he was telling me there were more. Men. women, young, old, people living life on autopilot, thinking they had more time, more chances, more clarity coming someday. People who hadn't rejected him out of hatred, but out of neglect, delay, passivity. And they needed to hear, not a sermon, not a theory, they needed a witness. Someone who had been where they were. Someone who had seen what they couldn't see yet. Someone who had met Jesus and returned changed. That someone was me. Jesus stepped closer, and without touching me, I felt something being placed into my spirit. It wasn't physical. It wasn't even a message in words. It was weight, holy weight. A responsibility that didn't crush me. It filled me. My life suddenly had direction in a way it never had before. "You must tell them," he said, "not just with your words, with your life." Those words weren't just a command. They were branded into me. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I knew some people wouldn't believe me. Others would roll their eyes, change the subject, or call it a dream. But I didn't care, because I had stood in the presence of the real Jesus. And once you've seen him, once you've truly known him, you can't stay silent. I opened my mouth to ask, to plead for just a little more time with him, but I never got the chance. In an instant, he was gone. Not in anger, not in a flash of drama, just gone. Like he had stepped behind a curtain. And with him, the light, the stillness, the peace of that realm began to dissolve. I felt myself falling, not down, but away. Away from that place. Away from the purity and presence. Back toward something dense, heavy, and cold. My return wasn't gentle. I slammed back into my body like someone being dragged out of a deep sleep. And it hurt. Pain exploded through me. My chest screamed. My lungs fought for air. My head pounded. I felt every broken piece of me crying out in agony. My ears rang. My eyes fluttered open. I heard shouting, distant, urgent. Hands were on me. Someone was calling my name. I was back. But I was not the same. As I lay there, barely able to move, one thought echoed over and over in my mind. You have to tell them. And I knew from that moment forward, my life wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about rebuilding what was lost or recovering what had been broken. It was about delivering what I had seen, what I had felt, and what I had heard from the mouth of Jesus Christ himself. There were people who were ready, but asleep. And now I had been sent back to wake them up. I'm back in this world, but I'm not the same. How could I be? I stood in the presence of Jesus. I saw eternity with my own eyes. I felt the weight of truth, the power of love, and the urgency of what's coming. And now, I'm here, with a message. This isn't just a story. It's a wake-up call, for you, for me, for everyone who's been walking through life asleep, thinking there's always more time, more chances, more someday. But I'm telling you, someday is running out. We don't have time to waste. The world is moving toward a choice. A line is being drawn. And the question that matters most is simple. Who will you follow? This isn't about religion. It's not about checking boxes or playing it safe. It's about relationship. It's about knowing the one who made you, who loves you, who's been reaching for you even when you didn't know it. He's calling you now. Don't wait. Don't ignore that pull in your heart. Wake up. I'm here to tell you that Jesus is real. He's alive. And he's still calling people home. And if you feel even the slightest stirring in your spirit, that's him. Don't brush it off. Don't walk away. Lean in. If this message has spoken to you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share this video so others can hear it. You never know whose life could be changed just by passing this along. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. I have more to share, more that Jesus showed me. I'm here to speak truth, to wake people up, and to remind the world that eternity is real. God is still moving. Don't miss it. Let's walk this journey together. Let's stay awake. And may Jesus himself bless you as you seek him.